my question is on going back to the freeing temples from the government.
Yes, sir.
My little understanding of temples historically is they're more than a place of worship. They had a role to play in the local economic development, keeping the social fabric together.
Right.
Now, I know that Article 25 gives us the freedom. Now, why is it not being challenged when other religions have freedom?
Louder, louder. Yes.
Other
What is not
religions-
being challenged?
The control of the government on the temples
Right.
is not being challenged under Article 25. We have
Right.
freedom of... And the least the government can do is prescribe a guideline as to how a trust should be formed, who should be the representative, so that the casteism and creedism does not enter.
Right.
And they should be done with it. Why are they not doing it?
So, I think I've done at least 30 lectures on temple freedom, and I've taken a conscious call to not talk on it except in court. But let me answer your question. One, every government has at least two incentives to have deep tentacles in the temple ecosystem. First, money. Second is VIP darshans. You can facilitate it. That's a sign of power. If you can get a darshan in Tirupati and you can get it arranged, please tell me it's not a matter of pride for a few people. It is, right? 3, money, the first point that I said is official. The third category of money is unofficial. Gold, land, real estate. So, generally speaking, every politician has a stake in it. All major legislations in this country which control temples are in some form of challenge before the Supreme Court. More petitions have been filed. I'll tell you what happens. One set of petitions get filed, they complete their journey, they're ready for arguments. Then someone files a second round of petition. Until pleadings are complete in that second batch of petitions, you can't start arguments. Each time the matter is ready, comes a new batch of petitions. That makes me wonder, who is filing them strategically? The matter is ready for arguments after 10 years. And then comes the new batch. What is going on? I am not questioning the bona fides of everyone, because you see, sometimes it so happens that some people may see that the first batch of petitions have raised certain arguments, but they have not raised certain other arguments. So they may want to complement or supplement those arguments through a new batch of petitions. I get that. But these are the realities of litigation. A lawyer only will be able to relate to this. 3, it's not as if all temples are under state control and in all states. Okay. You use the word casteism. How many instances of caste-based prejudice do you regularly come across with respect to those temples which are not under government control? Why are Hindus so easy to accept their guilt even in places where it does not exist? Why are we constantly resorting to self-flagellation in the name of caste? How much do we understand about the history of this particular system? How much do we know of the fabrication of this particular history? It's almost as if you enter the boxing ring and before the other guy lands a punch, you're saying caste. Who does it? Don't do it. Does casteism exist? Yes. I'm not denying it. But you have to realize that when somebody resorts to casteism in temples, everybody is scared of the SC/ST Atrocities Act. How many people have the guts to do it? That legislation has really no checks and balances, and that's exactly why the Supreme Court had to come out with checks and balances, which the government and center undid, so to speak. Tell me how many people have the guts today to commit a caste-based atrocity and get away with it. Impossible. Socially, you're out. Legally, you're out. You won't even get to present your case before the court of law. A lot of people have committed suicides during the course of the proceedings because of the social ostracization that they go through the moment this case is filed. The reality in, let's say, in rural areas when it comes to the manner in which this is invoked to settle personal scores is unbelievable. That is also another form of reality, that is reverse casteism, so to speak, and that too through the means of a legislation. How many people are willing to actually take this position in public? Guilt somehow seems to be a one-way street. It shouldn't be. So, when we raise the issue of caste as the primary hurdle, it gives the government a convenient handle to say, that's why I'm needed in temples, because if I'm not there, you guys will fight amongst each other. So bust this myth of casteism in temples as much as possible. So I don't know when it will see its own fruition in terms of temples being free. None of us needs to go to court. We don't need to go to court because the central government has the power under the concurrent list to come out with a model legislation. We don't need to go to court for places of worship act because the legislature can repeal what it has passed. We don't need to go to court for the Waqf Act. You can repeal it, amend it. But we still constantly seem to be going to court. So I have to go to court under the previous dispensation and I have to knock the doors of the same institution under this dispensation. This is exactly why I said policy-wise there's been no difference. The difference is the other side is fantastic when it comes to making regime changes inside the bureaucracy and policy changes the moment it comes to power. You know why? They have their plan of action ready. They don't think after coming to power. They do. They've built a network of think tanks and policy-based pressure groups across the country which have their own, let's say, asks, so to speak, ready, which the government is expected to deliver the moment they get into power. The biggest problem of this side is its impotent, useless activism on social media, which never translates to policy-based pressure. You have not created such institutions yet. I'll give you an example. As a practicing lawyer, what I try and do, given whatever little, let's say, visibility I have, is when someone comes and asks for money and says, no, do you need any money for anything you support? I say, please don't insult me with this question. I'm a practicing lawyer. I don't need anything from anyone. I can take care of myself and 10 other people. So get lost. But there are people who need that money. So I identify and say, this group is doing a lot of work. They don't have the support. Put the money there. Put the money here. The best of money bags from this side, so to speak, have zero interest in policy-based changes, by the way. They don't invest in policy think tanks because it's not attractive enough. It's boring job. Because the ROI is not going to be immediate. They want to see an immediate return. I'm saying this VC mentality when it comes to policy will not work. This is not venture capital. It'll take its own sweet time to deliver the results. Indic policy groups and think tanks suffer the most when it comes to dearth of resources. Brilliant people who have given up their fantastic lucrative careers are putting in their own money to come out with policy think tanks. But you see, when such a talented group of people come, after having given up their careers, that means they already have families to take care of. They would have ramped up their lifestyle to a certain extent when they were in the private sector. They're expected to give it up once they enter the policy sector. Who's going to pay them? That's the hope that the temple will fund such groups, but the temple itself is shackled. So I'm genuinely saying this. The money bags in the Hindu society must look for investment in policy, serious research, not Twitter influencers, not YouTube influencers. That is second grade and third grade investment. Primary investment is in policy. Do that. So I'm genuinely hoping that we make the transition. So political victory, I think largely the job is done. And thanks to the stupidity of the opposition, it will never come back to power in the next 10 years. Not because nobody is making mistakes, but nobody has the brains to call out mistakes. Or the interest, because their vote banks are interested only in constantly indulging in identity politics. And as long as they keep doing that, this government will continue its Rath Yatra. You will not be able to dislodge them. Take it for granted. Unless they commit a major blunder, you will not be able to dislodge them. Now that means assume, so that level of, let's say, that ground has been covered. So what is the next base? Okay, now the public is more conscious of its Hindu identity, which you see in the perpetual outrage factory on social media. So that level of awareness is achieved. The next level of awareness is calm thinking in terms of solutions. It seems to be slightly more difficult to push people in that particular direction because it's not attractive enough. It requires a lot more homework and hard work. And it requires specialized skill sets, which you're expected to imbibe or equip yourself with. Most of us have engineering backgrounds. By default, people who support this particular thought process have utilitarian qualifications and not humanity-based qualifications, because you look down upon humanities and then you wonder what's going on in humanities. So that shift is needed. At the very least, you need to be able to produce 25 to 30% of the talent pool which is dedicated to humanities, which means history, which is looking at linguistics, which is even looking at Sanskrit studies for that matter. So the hope is that we will move into this phase slowly. It will take its own sweet time, but I think it will happen.